asking their thoughts. Who do they trust? Who do they feel comfortable talking to when negative things come to their mind and they don't know what to do with it? Having that conversation, having a plan in place, you'll be surprised how well a plan works.
Welcome to the Generation Youth Podcast. I'm your host, James McLamb, back again with another exciting episode. Today, my audience and my friends, we have a special guest with us, Miss Kimberly Clark. How are you doing, Kimberly?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate you being with us and dealing with some tech issues that we had before we started this particular recording. Hey, our friend Brittany Richmond connected us, so let's shout out to her. She's a great person
Brittany.
who is, yes, Brittany. So, Kimberly, I was excited when you and I first connected and we were able to really relate very well. So introduce yourself to our Generation Youth audience. Tell them a little bit about yourself and how you ended up where you are now.
All right, cool. So my name is Kimberly Clark. I am a Louisiana native. I am from Castor, Louisiana. And it's a real small town. Like really, I don't even think it's considered a town. It's considered a village, right? And so I'm a Navy veteran. I'm a best-selling author. I'm an emotional intelligence expert speaking to youth. And I'm also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner.
Now, you said emotional intelligence expert. What does that mean? Because that's a mouthful for a country boy like me.
It is. I meant this emotional intelligence expert, meaning that everything that causes us to behave the way that we behave, I've studied it. Not only studied it, but I've experienced it in my own life. And I love to speak to youth about that specific thing because it definitely guides us in every area of our lives.
Now, what do you mean by that? That it guides youth in every area of your life? Because I know our audience hears emotional IQ and all that kind of stuff from the educational side, but my experience is that we really don't understand what people are talking about. It's just it's like, oh, that's the popular term now. It'll go away in a few months and something else will come along. But really, this is not going to go away. So let's explain it. Explain it to them as if they never heard any of this before so that they'll understand what's going on.
Right. It has become a super popular buzzword, emotional intelligence. You hear it, but you don't really, it kind of goes in one ear and out the other. It's just one of those things that people have made to be trending right now. But for me, emotional intelligence is how I view the world. How I view the world, what I think about the world, how I let my emotions control me, how I control my emotions, how I let other people, what they say, how I internalize that, how I speak to other people. That's all emotional intelligence. Is how we empathize, how much we are compassionate with other people, how we're able to regulate and manage our emotions in different situations, whether we're angry, whether we're going through some type of anxiety, regardless of how we're feeling, how we're able to manage that. And especially how we're able to manage that dealing with other people, because sometimes our feelings can be so strong toward other people, or what they say can affect us so much. Learning how to deal with that in a positive and healthy way, that's what emotional intelligence is.
Well, here we are in the 2020s, and this is becoming, as you just mentioned, more of a popular buzzword, more something that we're concentrating on. Why now? Why? I was a high schooler in the late 80s. I'm just showing my age there, folks. And, I was a high schooler in the late 80s. We didn't talk about emotional intelligence. I don't even think we understood what that word meant. We didn't talk about our EQ. We talked about our IQ. That's the things that we talked about. So how has it become an issue? Why? I mean, I'm thinking like a parent now. It's like, hear these words. What does this mean? Why is it now? Why is it a big deal to my kids now?
It's always been a big thing. We just didn't have the language for it. We didn't know what it was called. We knew that we were affected by other people. We knew that we were affected by our emotions. We just didn't know what to call it. Just like when I was in school, we didn't really talk about mental health as much as we're talking about mental health now. It's not, it wasn't an issue that was accepted, that people actually realize, okay, this is a really big thing. We need to discuss this. We need to have resources available for people. So I believe it's always been around. We just did not know exactly what it was. So now that we've actually put a word to it, now that we actually have the language for it and it's more well known, we're able to study it. We're able to give more resources to the people who need it the most. That's our mental health illness community, and people who are diagnosed and people who are undiagnosed, people who just go through things, right? we have to let them know what emotional intelligence is, that it's something that you can develop. Anybody, it's something that you can develop, right? You don't have to have this crazy degree or whatever to develop emotional intelligence. It's something that you can be taught. It's something that you can teach yourself. It takes a little studying. It takes a little recognizing your own triggers, what makes you tick, what makes you feel full of anxiety, recognizing all of those things and being willing to develop healthier habits opposed to the negative ones we're used to having.
So how do we identify, youth that are needing this problem? How can we distinguish which ones are struggling with this? Because if I'm understanding what you're saying, they all are in some level or another in the scale, if there is a scale. So
Mm.
how do we identify which ones are struggling? What does that look like?
It looks like isolation. It
Ooh.
looks like, people who are being bullied and also the bully themselves. Because when you're out there bullying people, you got something going on the inside of you too. You have some emotional stuff that you don't know what to deal with. So you're taking it out on other people. So it looks like you're isolating. You have anxiety all the time. You don't want to be around anybody. You don't know how to say no. You don't know how to stand up for yourself. You don't know how to interact. You don't know how to socialize with people. There's a difference sometimes, but sometimes you just don't want to socialize with people. And adults go through that too, right? But just knowing the difference, you don't want to. There's a thing, there's a tell, I can say. If you can find the kid who's always off to himself or herself, always in the corner, always doing stuff alone, right? They're nice to other kids, but they're always alone. That's usually the kid that doesn't know how to regulate their emotions. They don't know themselves to a certain extent. They don't know that they are worthy of it. They don't know that they have purpose. They don't know that they are loved. And so when they get that EQ, their emotional intelligence into their mind, like, hey, okay, this is something I can regulate. Those are the ones that are impacted the most.
I love what you're saying, and I love that feel a calling to help young people, teenagers that are struggling with this, especially those who are off by themselves, that loner, which we can all kind of identify with in some way or another. Why are you called to do this? What is the passion that drives you, that has driven you to want to do this?
Lived experiences, my own
Mm.
lived experiences. Growing up in a small town, let's say had about 70%, I was going to say half, but about 70% of the boys there I was related to. And the other 30% just didn't like me, right? And so I grew up with, I know you know about small town. And so I grew up, I didn't love myself. I had so many insecurities, so many limited beliefs about who I was. And that showed. I isolated. And then I had those bullies too that would talk about me, and I internalized every little word they said, every negative word they spoke against me. I internalized it. I believed it. I believed that I was nothing. I believed that I was ugly. I believed that I was all these different things, right? And so having that belief, I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to be, 10 or 11 years old and don't want to live anymore, right?
Mm.
And so I went through that as a child, as a teenager, all the bullying, all the insecurities, all the limited beliefs. And even in the military, I went through those things as well. And so after I experienced MST, which is military sexual trauma, while I was in the military serving in Guam. And that changed the whole trajectory of my whole life. And after that, I chose to cope with drugs and alcohol. I was introduced to cocaine 2 weeks after I came home from the Navy. And that stirred a 15-year addiction. And you talking about the insecurities and limiting beliefs was intensified. That's what drugs do, though. It intensifies what's already there.
Yeah.
It makes it so much more worse. We think it's going to be better, but it makes it so much more worse. And so I
Yeah.
identify, I have lived experience with the bullying, with the insecurities, with all of these different internal, emotional, negative habits. And I want to touch as many young people as possible to let them know that they are not alone. There is a way out of this. There is a way that you can live with all these things that these people have said about you, to where you don't believe it no more. No matter what anybody says about you, you won't believe it. And you can have that confidence where you are right now. You can be that bold.
So when you're speaking to them and you're talking with them, either from the platform or in that one-on-one contact a little bit later, how are you sharing to them how they can move through this?
Mhm.
Because this is a complex issue. It's not just as simple as, hey, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna wow you in my 25 minutes that the schools allow me to speak, and you're going to be great for life. We know that's not possible. We got to give them some steps, and you're providing a spark for them. So,
Mhm.
what are you saying to them to kind of get them to go, I really need to take a look at this? Because that's really what you're trying to do is get them to stop and
Mhm.
say, I got to make a change.
Right, definitely. Well, in my presentation, I have 7 principles that I developed. 7 principles
Ooh.
to building resilience and overcoming
See, now when
challenges.
you start throwing out numbers like that, the geek inside of me guy gets excited because I'm like, "Ooh, 7. Ooh, I love this. Let me write 7 down." So I'm gonna be taking notes.
Okay, yeah, it's 7 principles. And listen, these 7 principles came from me sitting down, writing all of these different things that I went through and the things that I learned from the things that has helped me the most in my life. I literally took the time to sit down and write this stuff down, and I came out with
See,
these 7 principles.
let me stop you right there, and I want to say something to the audience. Did you hear what she just said? These are not 7 principles that she read in a book that someone else did, and she just reworded them to make them sound like herself. There is a lot of speakers, a lot of trainers who are doing that. They're taking other people's content and and I'm not saying there's a problem with that, but Kimberly is sharing with you her lived experiences and what she used to do. So that's a different take, people. So pay attention to the next few minutes, is what we're going to say.
Absolutely. So yeah, those 7 principles I came up with from my own life, from my own lived experiences. And so I'm like, okay, this is what has helped me the most. This is what brought me out of the situations I was in. And so this is what I'm gonna share. And so I came up with those 7 principles: building a support system, developing emotional intelligence, not being afraid to start, not being afraid to fail, success, and loving yourself. Within those 7 principles, you can, I'm telling you, we talk about some of everything dealing with how you deal with your emotions, how you deal with, going to school when you don't want to go to school, dealing with stuff that's going on within the family and you don't know what to do with yourself, thinking stuff that's going on with your friends and you don't know how to deal with that stuff. Within those 7 principles, we talk about it all. It
Mm.
encompasses everything. I didn't know that when I wrote it down, but when I started talking, I'm like, wow, like this is definitely divine because it encompasses everything. And so, yeah, I came up with those 7 principles, and that's what I leave them with. Not only that, but I wrote a book with those 7 principles, explaining them in a deeper manner and a workbook to go with it. And so I offer that presentation as well as like a workshop to go along with it. So I don't ever want to leave them with any questions, with wondering how am I going to apply this to my life, or how do I even do this? I don't want to leave you with that. I'm not one of those. I really want you to understand how you can live this thing out, how you can be better and feel better and do better as a person and live up to your authentic self. I mean, if I'm just there to hear myself talk, then I mean I'm missing the whole mark. I'm missing the whole point. I'm really there for them I'm person centered. So yeah, that's what I leave them with.
Let's go into first one. Let's dive into the first one and let's speak to the two major groups that I hope will benefit from what we're our conversation today. First, parents. You talked
Mhm.
about building your support team. So they see their son or daughter and they say, okay, I'm seeing some of the tales. They're always kind of alone when they're in groups. They don't talk about being and hanging out with friends. They may be a little bit bullied, and then they're lashing out to those that they can bully themselves.
Mhm.
And I see those types of signs in those. So I want to build my support system, help them build a support system. Kimberly, help me. What do I do? How do I start this with building a support system? What would you share with them?
You would sit your child down and you have a conversation with them like, hey, this is what I've noticed that you've been doing, and I want to help you through this. You don't have to talk to me about this right now if you don't want me to, but I want you to know that I'm available when you are ready, and I want to sit down with you. I want to write down a support system so you can have it with you physically and you can know it mentally. You can always know this is who your support system is. And so you, of course, will write down yourself and you will go through the people that's in their life that are trustworthy, that are a trusted voice. And you can put their names down as well. And also have a conversation with those people and be like, hey, like I had a conversation with my child and I wrote you down as a potential support system. So I just want you to know it's there. So if you get a call from them, this is why. But having a conversation with your child and asking their thoughts, who do they trust? Who do they feel comfortable talking to when negative things come to their mind and they don't know what to do with it? Having that conversation, having a plan in place, you'll be surprised how well a plan works. Just having a freaking plan. It sounds so simple and so cliche, but having a plan in place when you don't know what to do, having that plan, it can literally be the gap in living and dying. It truly can. Just having that plan together, but having a conversation with your child, putting together those people that are trustworthy in your life, that's definitely a place where you can start.
So if they're trying to put together this list, is there certain categories of people or roles or some of that stuff that they need to kind of concentrate on?
They can go as deep as they want. They can even go by putting, like you said, by putting it in categories. Okay, if I feel anxiety, this is who I feel like I
Uh-huh.
can trust to talk to about anxiety. If I feel angry, this is who I feel like I can talk to about feeling angry. Or if I'm feeling suicidal, this is who I feel like I can trust if I'm feeling suicidal. And even put those other resources, that 988 resource, put that on there as well. If they don't have anybody, in their direct life that they feel comfortable enough talking about something that deep to. But
Mm-hmm.
putting down the people that they know and also outside resources as well. But yeah, making those categories, you can take this thing as deep as you want to do it. It depends on the child and depends on how comfortable they are and how many people they know, not per se, but how many different emotions they can identify with
Yeah.
you, and just write those things down.
What if you're having a kid, because your tales are is they're isolated and they're alone. What if they have a kid that say, I don't trust anybody, I don't have anybody? How do we bridge that gap? Because, I'm thinking there's going to be a parent that's listening that's going, this sound really great, but you don't know my son. This sound really great, but you don't know how my daughter is going to react to this. She's going to be like, I don't need anybody. There's nobody I trust. How do we help them see that they need this, that they need a support system? Because when you were talking about Kimberly, I'm going to take a side here. I was thinking about my two oldest and how we intentionally introduced them to people as they were growing up that were voices that I respected and I trusted that would feed into them so that, and I knew supported my values and it supported what our view of the world was going to be, so that we came alongside. I had to be intentional in that, because in this day and age there's so many voices that are, and we live in Raleigh, North Carolina, so it was not like growing up in a little country like you and I did, in a little area where everybody was kind of, we all had the same kind of outlook and viewpoint and stuff, so everybody was kind of the same. I was intentional in that. But how does a parent help convince little Johnny and Susie that they need to do this?
By definitely being trustworthy. I know sometimes we can say things and then behave in a different way. Like we can say things but our actions show something different. And that's what they're paying attention to. And also I've learned that even when, especially teenagers, even when you think they're not listening, or they say something off the wall and out the side of their neck, like they don't care about anything, they're listening, and they do. And if there's a plan in place, they will take the time out to read it, to know that it's there. If there's nobody that they can trust, just start with yourself and start with those resources and continue being trustworthy. But I promise you, even if they are acting out and they say they're not listening, that you might even see that in their behavior. I promise you they are. They definitely are. But having that plan in place and continuing to show those actions, being trustworthy, that makes a difference. Because you can't, you can't force it on them, or else they're gonna go in the other direction. But just letting them know that it's available, that can make a big difference.
How'd you identify your support group?
By the people who were continually there, even when I didn't
Mm.
want them there, even when I was going against them, even when I was saying those very same things, like, I don't need anybody, I can do this on my own, or I can just figure this thing out. The people who were just there, they're like, okay, well, it is what it is, but I'm still here. Those were my people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What is another one of the seven that if you could only give them two, we give them one of the support system. If you only could give them one more to say, okay, let's start here, which one would you go with? Oh, I love that. I love it when a guest goes,
Hmm. Probably not being afraid to fail or take risk. And I think that it kind of encompasses one of the other ones, but not being afraid to fail or take a risk. A lot of times, young people, they don't want to do certain things because in their mind, they've already failed at it. They don't want to step out and do anything different because they don't believe that they can. And that goes along with that emotional intelligence, what your belief system is, how you see yourself, how you even see the world. So not being afraid to fail or even start a thing, it is the premise for, you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
actual failure. Like if you can stop, if you can prevent it right there, you can convince them that they can do anything that they put their mind to. If you can convince them that it's never a failure, it's always a lesson to be learned, regardless if you get it the first time or not. You're going to learn something from it and be better the next time. If you can convince them of that, then everything else will fall into place. But what we believe in is our most powerful asset. And if we start with what they believe, especially about themselves, that can be their most powerful asset.
You know, the problem I've seen with parents in trying to instill into a child about not being afraid to fail is how they have reacted to their child's failure as the child has gotten older. If they have
That's good.
reacted negatively or aggressively, oh, you shouldn't have done that, you shouldn't have done that, then the child tends to retreat more. And the child tends to retreat more. And we've gotten such in both academics, well, the three A's, academics, arts, and athletics, that if they're not at the top of their game every single time, that they're a failure, and we convey that to them. But if we think back to when they were learning to walk, when the kid got up as a little baby and started to try to walk and they took 2 steps or 1 step and fall down, we didn't look at them and said, you failure, you're not going to do anything, you're a rotten failure, look how bad you were falling on that thing, you're never going to amount to anything. No, what do? We get so, oh, look, you did so good, that was great. And we encouraged them to get up and keep falling because we knew eventually they would stop falling. But we don't do that. We don't do that as they get older. And I think it says more about parent and the adult that's working with them's ego and their own view of the world, maybe their own emotional intelligence, than it does about the youth. And that conveys to it. I don't know how we can convince, without just continually preaching it, how we can convince them to let them fail. It's okay to do that. I
That's
think
a good
social
point.
media hurts us, Kimberly, don't you? I,
Yeah.
I mean, we're always putting our perfect portrayals of successes all the time online, which
Mhm.
encourages a kid, I cannot fail. Which, I think I failed more often than I succeeded. I think I failed to achieve what I wanted to athletically from middle school through high school 70% of the time. But people will remember that 30% of the time that I did achieve it. They don't know about those other 70% of the time where I didn't make the squad, or I didn't make the starting team, or I, was a error prone player that caused, everything to go wrong. All they remember is the hit that won it or the catch that won it, or, they don't remember. Those were 2 instances. They don't remember all the 99 instances. I don't know how we convince this.
Yeah, definitely. That's the excellent point, because we do go from wanting them to walk, right? Wanting them to crawl, wanting them to be able to get up and do things on their own, to being mad at everything that they don't do the way we want them to. And so that does speak to us as parents, and how we should be able to give more grace. It's about our mindset too. They're following us. They're looking at our leadership. They're looking at how
Mm-hmm.
we're living, not just what we're saying. They barely, they're hearing what we're saying, but they're watching more about what we're doing and how we're acting. And so if we can get in a place to where we can give more, not only give more grace, but we can show them and be a living, walking example of what we're telling them to do, then that can make a big difference as well, for sure. And you're right, social media, man, oh man, the
It's horrible.
comparison the comparison wheel, like it literally is the thief of joy. Because if we're always watching, especially them, if we're always watching social media, trying to figure out what we want to be, how we want to look, we just sitting up there being lied to, because people only show the good things on social
Yeah.
media, and sometimes it don't even be good thing, they just make it look like it is. But kids don't understand, they don't understand that, because they see it, they want it, and it's like, okay, that's all I can see, that's all I can concentrate on right now. And so it's up to us as parents, to parents, to educators, and to people that's in their lives that actually, they want to see these kids do better. It's up to us to have those conversations, those real raw conversations like we're having right now, and just be open and honest with them. Like, hey, this is not what real life, it's going to be like. You are going to stumble. You are going to make mistakes. But you know what? That's what's going to develop you. That's what's going to develop your character. That's what's going to make you even better, even a better person. That's how you're going to figure out who you are authentically.
Yeah.
And that's the best part of life. It's the best part of life. You just have to get through this icky feeling right here, and you're gonna get to the best part of life.
I got my two oldest are in their 20s and they're very different. One always responded so well from failure. It would drive them to be better. It would drive them to work harder. It would drive them to be, I'll show you, I'll do better the next time. You'll never remember this. And the other one, a failure was like, okay, well, I am a failure. And the great Zig Ziglar said that failure is an event, not a person. So,
Yeah.
and that's something that I just cannot seem to explain enough to both parents and youth as well, this message. So you're going and you're speaking and you said curriculum. How do you get this message out? Tell our audience how that Kimberly gets this message out and what she's doing and where she's at.
Okay, you mean in the aspect of like who do I speak to?
Who do you speak to
okay.
and how can they connect with you?
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I speak to youth from 13 to 19. Basically, teenagers. I speak about, substance use prevention. I speak about mindset, leadership, all that encompasses emotional intelligence, right? So I can be reached at KimberlyClarkSpeaks.com. All my information is on there. If you want to speak to me directly, you can email me at Kimberly@KimberlyClarkSpeaks.com. This is my passion. This is not a job for me. This is something I'm called to do. And so definitely we could talk for hours. We could talk for hours. But yeah, KimberlyClarkSpeaks.com.
And guys, go to your website. You can connect with her there. Social media as well. I mean, we talked about the dangers of it, but we're always there. I mean, they connect with you there. How can they connect with you on social media?
I'm on every platform at Kimberly Clark Speaks.
Very, very good. And audience, the links will be in the show notes. So if you're listening, go to your platform, whether it's Apple or iHeart or Spotify or some derivative of that, and you'll find in the show notes all the links. If you're watching on YouTube, you know the drill. Just look straight down and hit more information, and you'll find it there. And going forward and connect with us. So, Kimberly, thank you for not as much as the message that we've shared today, but the passion you have to change young people's lives to help them overcome this, because the isolation that we see is growing quite a bit. I mean, I can look back and I can see those people when I were younger, in my classes, but it seems like it grew when I was teaching. The decade that I was teaching, I could see it growing. And now it seems like it's even more prevalent. I believe and we could have this conversation on another time. I believe it is social media that's pushing a lot of that. And I believe it's not allowing them to fail as well. That is a lot of it. But I so admire your passion and your calling to do this. This is such an important topic. And thank you for being able to share with our audience and giving them some insight of where to start.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I had a wonderful, wonderful time.
And audience, thank you for sticking with us. Listen, you've been listening to us for over 30 minutes. You've obviously found some value for this, or you forgot the podcast was on and you started doing something else. Whatever it is, you're here and you're listening to me now. And I'd like for you to do me a favor, audience. Please like and comment, but most importantly, share this content, because someone that you know needs to hear this message. They need to know about this. And we would like to reach them with as much impact as we can. So please like, comment, and share. Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Brittany, for getting us together. We'll do another shout out to her. And we'll be back soon with another episode of the Generation Youth Podcast. Thank you, audience.